Suno is not always going to give you what you expect or what you want. I've found that when you're trying to do pretty complex orchestration from piano input, Suno will always give you notes, maybe phrases, all kinds of little inserts that you really don't want. Well, it's not perfect. And again, we're using this to try and get ideas for orchestration and arrangement, not necessarily use this to create finished product. You're probably always going to have to tweak Suno's output as a composer to get what you really want. Now, I'm talking about Suno giving you back music that is almost entirely based on what you feed it. You can, of course, ask for Suno to get more creative, and there you kind of can get almost anything out. Let's go through some of the cases where Suno gives me almost what I want, but never really quite what I want. We'll see what some different style settings are, what some different influence settings, how they can affect the output. I have a melody here, a little piano piece I wrote a long time ago. Let's play that. We'll use that as input to Suno and see what kind of orchestral output it can create. Okay, well, this piece, it's got this harmonic line in the bass that Suno is going to pick up on as an accompaniment, and it's going to go to town with that. You have a line like that in a piece, and Suno is always going to pick something like that out. Even if it's only on one measure, Suno can detect it and use it as a repeating pattern on you, which can be nice in some ways where you can give it something simple, but give it just a little bit of some counterpoint, some counter melody, something a little bit original in there. And Suno will normally grab onto that and use it as a motive, repeat it, do all kinds of nice things with it. Here the problem can be Suno might pick up on this bass line more than the melody, and it has a tendency to reduce the melodic content, the dynamics of the melody in a lot of cases, sometimes even lose the melody in favor of what it thinks is the more assertive or aggressive line that it kind of always tries to emphasize. Let's see what the first output of this will be in Suno. Just telling it to orchestrate it, don't add drums. I almost always say don't add drums when I want to orchestrate something because Suno has a tendency to always put in percussion. And in most cases, it's not really all that good. Well, let's see what happens on the first take of this through Suno. We'll set it to the standard audio input influence 100%, style input 50%, and weirdness set to 0. Well, that had some nice moments, but there was a lot wrong in there, as I've notated on the screen. One of the things that I said was Suno has a tendency to bring out the bass lines more than the treble. So let's try something a little different. I split the piano part so that I can control the volume of the treble line, the melody line, separately from the accompaniment. I generated an audio version of that from the Notion samples, and let's feed that in and see if the top line is accentuated more, and we'll try some different parameters. So definitely we're bringing out that line more than we were before, and let's see how that affects things. Well, that was interesting. I think I like it a little better. It definitely emphasized the melody a little more. The inner accompaniment part was not so emphasized. As I noted, I did tell it this time to do a film score. It didn't really change the texture that much from the other version, but it did have a little more cinematic quality to it. And it's still making its own decisions on some melody notes that are really not the best ones. It should stick to the melody I gave it. It has some very nice internal lines it added. Nice switching off between different instruments, cellos, horns, clarinet. It really is quite nice orchestration in a lot of ways. I did also set it 100% on film score style. That might have made a little difference. Let's listen to another version, the same settings, and see how Suno will create two different versions with the same input. Well, that one also had some nice moments. It started like it was just going to be a string and piano arrangement, which really would not be that bad. I have to think about that here since it is a piano piece originally. But then a weird clarinet comes in and destroys things. The melody again doesn't go to the exact notes in the score. Lots of little things that need to be corrected and fixed. But again, I wouldn't use this as the final result. You can bring in all the stems into a DAW and fiddle around and change some things around there, possibly to use this and create an acceptable demo version, perhaps. But the main thing here, of course, is that very few of us can afford to hire a real orchestra to hear our pieces. That's where Suno becomes an amazing tool to allow you to get a feel for what your music might really sound like. Yeah, you can do that in a DAW too, but Suno adds a kind of human-like sheen to the output that is nice and, quite frankly, difficult to get in a DAW without adding a lot of post-production. Not that if you're going to use Suno stuff, you're probably going to need post-production too, as a lot of people apply to their songs they create with this. So there you go. What are you going to do when you have problems in the Suno output? You can fiddle with prompts, and as you saw here, I told it to bring out the melodic line. That may or may not work for you. You can add a lot of prompts on your own. Here are a few prompts that you might consider. In reality, it's AI, so just experiment with your prompts. Keep changing things around. The only thing, of course, is the more times you do a create on the same input, the more chance you have that Suno will start adding more and more filigree and garbage into your piece. So you just have to be careful about that.